That's where AIBE steps up to support the business-to-business inquiry. As stated earlier, AIBE is fully geared up to engage with both Australian and Indian businesses and stakeholders. AIBE will continue to outwardly promote and facilitate business-to-business engagements. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. Before I ask Rodney, our newly elected National Vice Chair of the AIBC, to ask the next question to Ambassador Nilmova, can I just ask you one simple question? Where do you get your energy and drive to do this?
17 visits to India, and I've been driven because of Alexander the Great. He travelled across the top of now Pakistan and India, and he left an image in me that I'm not there to conquer, I'm there to help. And that is that I've spent a lot of time meeting people to the point where I created personal relationships before I created a business relationship. And that is the key. If you can't create the personal relationship in India, don't do it. You won't get anywhere. You've got to create that relationship.
Thanks, Con, and that's very good that we're trying to do this relational environment here today. So I'll hand over to Ravneet. Ravneet, over to you for your next question.
Thanks very much, Jim. Good morning, everyone here in the room, and also colleagues from Canberra in Australia. I'm going to ask a question straight away to Ambassador Anil Bhardwaji. Would you like to you feel comfortable from there, or if you'd like to come here on the chair? Ambassador Bhardwaj, I'm not going to introduce you because everyone knows you here. You have been the architect of the India-Australia strategy from the Indian end. My question really is in terms of how will the strategic relationship between both countries play out, given the changing geopolitics, and how do we move beyond the rhetoric and the futuristic partnership that will improve our bilateral and help drive the core business-to-business strategy? Because if you look at the real business-to-business strategy and the real business-to-business outcome between India and Australia, that's where we see the gap. So what are the 2 or 3 things that you really think need to happen to ensure a B2B outcome? You could come, sir.
Thank you very much, Ravneet. I think that's a very important question that you asked. And I'll divide my answer into 3 parts. The first part, of course, is the comprehensive strategic partnership between Australia and India. I think it's a given that the geopolitical circumstances that you referred to as such, that this relationship is certainly going to be on an upward trajectory. I see it going that way. The reason is quite simply that we have shared interests and we have shared values, especially as regards the Indo-Pacific. There is a focus as far as India is concerned on the Indo-Pacific. There is also, of course, Australia's continued interest in Indo-Pacific, but also a special step up to the Pacific Islands, where India also has its own interests. And we can see that there will be more initiatives that will be taken between the 2 countries, especially as far as the naval cooperation and defense are concerned. So the geopolitical aspect is quite clear. Because of the shared interests, we will continue on this trajectory. Now, as far as the governments are concerned, they put together a whole set of very important agreements or MOUs or letters of intent, and together they constitute a very important web of bilateral cooperation, stepping up ladders, if I may call them that. So we not only have the green partnership, for instance, the critical minerals partnership, which has been agreed upon, the innovation partnership between the research institutions. We also have now an new energy partnership, which has been agreed upon. And both countries are jointly working on many of these fields, which are new fields which did not exist before. So we have, the basic infrastructure which has been put together as far as that is concerned. We have the 2 economic strategies. which have identified the specific areas where the countries will work upon and should work upon. We have the consequent ECTA, which will hopefully go into effect by October after ratification by the Parliament in Australia. And at the same time, the governments are working towards the Comprehensive Economic Agreement. So SEPA, as we call it, should happen as well as a consequence. I have no doubt in my mind that we will be much better off. Of course, this has to be an investment-led relationship, as we've been saying all along, not just trade. And it is the businesses, and I would say probably the big businesses have a major role to play in taking the lead and getting into investment projects in each other's countries, because that will then spur trade. The second aspect is that we must concentrate on specific areas of collaboration. I'm very glad that AIBC has these subsets which are identified already. It's a right initiative. And the next step is to make sure that there is a connect, a physical connect if possible, or at least an online connect followed by a physical connect. Because in India, connection is very important, like in many other countries. And that trust which is built up subsequently can lead to actualization of business. And the third issue, which is the final one that I would touch upon, is the whole issue of making sure that the mindset is changed about the difficulties that we face as far as each other are concerned, because those hesitations should be put aside now. We've already had a number of interactions at various levels. The governments are on the same page. Businesses also should come together on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think what Anilji said is very true. We've got to have the businesses on the right page. We've got to make sure that the relationship is also based on investment. Over to you, Jim, for the next question.
Thanks very much, Ravneet. And I'd like to ask Deepak Kapla, the CEO and MD of Invest India now. Deepak made a really impressive presentation at our recent AIBC International Business Summit. He's got an extraordinary ability to encourage us to make business deals, and I'm really pleased he's here. So let me kick this off by asking you, you've mentioned in the past, and also recently at our International Business Summit, that investment is based on three pillars: people to people, government to government, and business to business. While we know that the Australia-India relationship in terms of people to people and government to linkages are an all-time high, what are your thoughts on how to further strengthen the business pillar between our countries to create successful and impactful outcomes?
Hi, Jim. Good to see you, even though virtually. Just about 2 weeks ago, we were there, and Ravneet and you and the entire team. I think you did an excellent job. And any of those of you who attended what happened 2 weeks ago in Sydney would realize an extremely high level of optimism when you walk away on this relationship. Jim, you're right about the three pillars we discussed. You know, it's interesting that every bilateral relationship has its own dynamics, but typically one has seen that it's the business to business which leads it, and then you have a government to government and people to people connect. Now think of this relationship. People to people, I think it's undisputable. You have numbers, but just look at the proximity and the relationships which are developing on that one. I think that's a very strong pillar. The government to government is what we are now seeing happening. Ambassador Wadhwa has been talking about it. He's leading a lot of effort, but also the recent treaties, etc. That lends a lot of credence, and that shows the importance of this relationship as we go forward. And in multiple ways, it could be geopolitics, it could be economic imperatives, it could be synergies and everything. Now we're left with the business to business bit. And as I see it, and especially so after when we were together in Sydney 2 weeks ago, I think this is where you will see a very fast uptake where this part is concerned. And I had a few numbers to share with you. Ambassador Wadhwa had shared this when I was in Sydney. And why I do want to share this with you is, so you know, we have a special dedicated team in Invest India to work with any investment happening on this corridor. Let me share with you my experience with actual numbers of what has happened. 5 years ago, the team would be working on business requests which were across 7 or 8 sectors. You had the traditional sectors, you had mining, and you had some of them. As I speak to you today, team has been working on 259 business requests. And I'll tell you why I'm really optimistic. It's across 34 sectors. Now, these sectors represent the synergies which we have. 34 is a big number. Can I just quickly go down so you have an idea as to what are the sectors we are talking about? Food processing, IT, tourism, metals and mining, construction, textiles, energy. These were the good old earlier pillars which we worked on. Now let's see what is added to it. Retail, healthcare, oil and gas, medical devices, leather, consumer goods, electronic services, education, your favorite sector, Ravneet. Automobile, a very interesting new one, media and entertainment. And you know, I've always seen whenever we have media and entertainment coming in, that is something of a very interesting bellwether point, because you see a lot of externalities developing out of that pillar. Chemicals, pharmaceuticals is a no-brainer. I mean, you know, I think India can really support and work a lot on that one with everyone. Capital goods, defense manufacturing. One of the biggest opportunities which we are seeing in India, even on a global perspective. Roads and highways, this is interesting. Now, this is not just about the construction element of it, but what I'm also seeing is a number of these sectors are also interest sectors for virtually everybody. Just before that, I must tell you, in the past 7 years, we've received FDI from over 162 countries in the world. No other country in the world has got that. The trust of 162 countries of putting their money and partnering with India. It's about a testimony to India's leadership. It's a clear testimony to the opportunity. It's a testimony to trust. And it's a testimony to partnership with India. But a number of these sectors from elsewhere, the reason why I picked up roads and highways, because it's the world's largest infrastructure development happening. As they say, 70% of India of 2030 is yet to be constructed. Keep that in mind and you see the opportunity space. And this is where I would really invite the financial aspect of this relationship, where I think there is an increasingly huge potential, which is completely untapped, and we need to work on. And a few others, if I may, airports, auto components, waste management, circular economy, very big. And I see this one coming up in a big way. Banking and finance, I've already alluded to. Electrical vehicles, ports and shipping, aviation, renewable logistics, telecom, biotechnology. But I'll tell you what interested me most in this visit. And I think you will start seeing the early shoots of it very soon, is on the innovation and the startup side. We are moving into a life and a world which is completely disrupted. And this disruption is now going to be a consequence and a result and a shaping of the new world by the new startups. And this is that community. What I saw was happening in Sydney and elsewhere is exemplary. But what I also see happening in India, and as you all know, that's one of the biggest stories we have. And just imagine, Startup India was launched in just January 2016. We are just about 72 months away from it. Today, you're number 3 in the world in number of unicorns, number 2 in the world in number of startups, number 1 in the world with new startups adding every day. And mind you, your unicorns are not based on PowerPoint presentation. Your unicorns were actually created on cash flow trajectories.
Yeah.
And you had a unicorn. One of my favorite ones is Mensa, which became a unicorn in just 7 months.
Wow.
That shows the opportunity which is happening in India and the ability to access that opportunity. My last point, why I'm leaving this point, is that it is critical for anyone across the world when they're looking at an expansion of the balance sheet, where India today is an imperative. For the first time in human economic history, a brand new company got 100 million new customers in 180 days. And the cost of acquisition of a client, which was 1/20th of that of a global average.
Yeah.
That is the new India.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And applause to the new India, my friends. I think thank you very much, Deepak. Very optimistic comments, and we're absolutely going to make sure that we work closely with you to make real things happen. Jim, are you happy for me to go with the next question?
If you go through now with Mr. Saxena, over to you.
Yeah. Mr. Didi Saxena ji, my question is to you. You've been an ambassador between India and Australia for years, from being sort of a leading industry person to being an entrepreneur, a very successful one, also heading the CII forum and so forth. I want to ask you, what do we need to do to make sure that the business to business outcomes happen? And I've heard you say a couple of things before, but I think it's really important to get that message across to all agencies in the room. Today, we have most of the people here who are going to make this happen. So I'm interested in understanding from you, post-ECTA, what do you think really needs to happen between Australia and India on the ground to make business to business happen?
Ravneet, I have no prescriptive formula. I mean, business is a very detailed micro issue on the ground. So the first thing which I think is critical is engagement. And I must say that the areas where we have been able to engage deeply have really resulted in some kind of outcomes and some kind of processes and gaining momentum. Field of education is one example.
Yeah, a bit closer. I don't think they can hear you. Yeah.
The field of education is one example. And as everybody said, I think the government to government relationships are strong, but business to business relationship leave much to be desired. And I think what has to happen, frankly, is to first create business literacy, which is very low in both countries. And I think before we talk ECTA, which is a facilitator and an enabler, is to generate enough interest in each other's country. And frankly, if you look at it from a point of view of Australia and India, many Indians would perceive Australia as the top 3 destinations to visit, as perhaps top 3-4 places where they would feel very comfortable with the people. But I don't think it'll rank in the top 15 as far as a place to do business. And that is largely because of the fact that we don't understand enough. Most Indian businesses look at India as, Australia as too small, too far, too remote. And do not have a view of Australia being a base where we can leverage out of the fantastic image that Australia has in the Asian markets. So it is an access to Asian markets. Vice versa in Australia, I mean, I think the key issue is which Australian businesses first have to really got interested in. The top end of the town, in my humble opinion, is not going to do it. I think this is going to be driven by the SMEs, people who have to put their own money, or people like who were here day before yesterday, Andrew Forrest or Mike Cannon-Brooks of Alsatian, who have a strong commitment and it's really their personal money. So I think the question really is that as far as Australia is concerned, this image of India being too hard, too difficult is a narrative we've all been hearing. But I think one key perception which has to be removed is the difference between risk and risky. And in my opinion, I mean, I've had the privilege of putting projects on both sides. I mean, I'm perhaps the only Indian Australian who's put a project in Australia and India. I'll talk a little bit about it. But I think the key issue really is, and why I mention risk versus risky is that if you think something is very risky, you have your blinkers on and you just don't want to progress anymore. Whereas if you think it's hard and it's risk, you at least make the effort to understand more and you take the initiative of trying to basically learn how to manage those risks. So that's step one. The step two is India is not a standard operating procedure. And I'm talking from an Australian perspective. You have to touch it, you have to feel it. And I'll give you my personal example. I was asked in 2003 by the Victorian government to lead a delegation. And companies which are big names, SPC, Simplot, Many others came, but there was a small company called Unibig Biscuit which came. And frankly, I mean, we gave them a fantastic trip. They met a lot of businesses, including large multinationals. So they're good. They got an expose. But this guy in Unibig said, "Do you mind staying for 2 days?" I'll take a couple of minutes to tell this
Yeah,
story.
we've got 2.5 minutes.
Okay, because this is important. So we went and he went to Bangalore with me. He went to Food World, and there were these two girls who were trying to flog something. And we said, we're not interested. But look, I mean, can we talk to you? She said, sure. So he said that, how long have you been working here? And they said, we've been working here for 6 years. And we asked them, are you happy? Very happy. So where do you live? They said, we live quite far away. How do you come? Do you drive? They said, no, we come by bus. So what time do you start? 8:30. So they said, we have to change 3 buses. We started 5 in the morning. And then he said, what time do you go back? 7 o'clock. When do you reach home? 9:30. So do you cook after that? No, my mother cooks for me. So do you then go to your room and do you rest? They said, no, I share this room with 5 siblings. Anyway, it went on and on. The bottom line is, we asked her the final question, that is this what you want to do for the rest of their lives? And they said, no, we want to become software engineers. So we said, what do you do about it? And they said, well, we basically attend classes on Saturday. We have half a day, and we do that on Sunday. And my last question was, how much do you earn? So they said $300. And he took a decision on the spot that he wants to invest in India, because that energy, that stimulation, that drive.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, it is not about doing, and this is with all due respect to KPMG and PwC and all the reports, India, the touch it, feel it, spell it, mark it to make.
It's a relational market.
And relationship in a many more intense sense. But that's why I say that SMEs will drive this.
Yeah.
The second end of I'll just make this from an Indian point.
Just last 1 minute.
Yeah. So the Indian companies have to look. You have to understand that Australia has a lot of technology and a lot of good quality raw material. And I can only talk of food and agri because we put up the largest project. I have no credentials to have done it, but our project of producing canola in Australia, we're the largest exporter, we're bigger than Cargill. And it happened because Australia, I must confess, lacks entrepreneurship. And the partnership of bringing entrepreneurship, intellectual capital, and financial capital is very critical. And I think we have to, at the Australian in a structural sense, get the super funds to invest.
Yes.
Because they are key drivers, and it's a question of understanding how to motivate them. So I'm sure at time I won't go ahead.
Thank you.
I personally feel Australia is a great market for India to access the rest of Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, DDV. I think AIBC and through AIBE will be very, very happy to work with you and the CII in that space to make sure that we get to know each other better and we are able to do real business with both countries. Over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Ravneet, and thanks again, Dee. You really made an amazing contribution in Australia with entrepreneurship, and a great exemplar for us to listen and look at your story. I'd like now to ask a question to Michelle Wade. She's the Commissioner for South Asia Global Victoria, and I've had the privilege of working with her in different hats, and she has got an outstanding perspective and experience in international trade, and has held senior diplomatic postings across from Italy to Malaysia and Spain. And Michelle, good to see you there. And I want to ask you, we're a national body, but we also support each state in what they do. So let me put a Victorian perspective to you. How can we encourage or promote Indian investments in Victoria, firstly? And what additional incentives or measures are being considered by the Victorian government to promote trade with India? Over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Jim, and it's great to see you, and thank you everyone today for being here. It's really good also having had Invest in India here to talk about investment from a Victorian perspective. And I'm going to share with you now, for those of you who aren't in government, that, there is a bit of a dark art to this. We work for, organisations that are known globally as trade promotion organisations, and we're driven by our KPIs. Now, I think we're at a time with our KPIs and investment where we have to really reflect on whether we're chasing the right things, because those KPIs have traditionally been for investment around jobs and capital expenditure. Now, COVID's created an environment where jobs can be anywhere. CapEx is lower because we're suddenly not building big office spaces. But in terms of that position from the Victorian government, it's partly coincidental and I think also forward thinking that we're putting a great deal of emphasis onto attracting really leading technology. And from that regard, the Victorian government's established something called the Breakthrough Fund, and that's a $2 billion fund over 10 years, which should become self-sustaining, to invest in new technologies, whether they originate from Victoria, from other states of Australia, or even from other international players. But I thought I'd also talk with you a little bit about how we currently assist companies, because I think when we reflect, you can divide it up into 3 levels. We've got our rockstar companies like Infosys, and from those perspectives, we have a really customized relationship. We're working alongside them, trying to create those really high value jobs in Victoria. And the great work we've done with Infosys recently, given the skill shortages around the world, has been working with our digital skills program, bringing mid-career people and having Infosys part of that, the corporations involved in that, to retrain as IT workers, and then also exposing companies to the international student workforce and making sure they're including them. So working with companies to go, what are your issues? Currently for most of the IT companies in Victoria, it's skills and helping them to unlock new pathways for skills. For mid-sized companies, one of the interesting things for us with India is they tend, you know, as I said, we work to our KPIs. We want companies to come in and invest all this money and create new jobs. With Indian companies, and I think with many companies from around the world, it's not how they enter Australia. They enter through acquisition. So what we try to do with those companies is say, you've come in, you've acquired a company, you haven't acquired it to sit quietly and let it run the way it's always run. We're here for the time when you expand that company. We'll be here to talk to you about what the Victorian government can offer, and we want you to form a greater part of the ecosystem. So the ones that I can think of who've entered via acquisition over the last few years are Sonata Software. They'll put on a significant number of jobs. Xentrix in the gaming industry. You couldn't have a happier person than the CEO of the acquired company in terms of the new exposure he's got to global clients through being part of Xentrix, and then Lead Squared in the edtech industry. Then I want to talk about startups, because startups, there are so many, and it's like, how do you work them? How do you make it work? For us, and on the back of having a really good staff member in our office in Bangalore who was able to unpick the methodology, we really follow the companies that are coming through with Series B funding. So there's a lot of even unicorns in India that are commerce-based, retail-based, won't necessarily ever look to Australia, but we're looking for the innovative technology that can really make a difference. And we're looking for the companies at the point in time that they have funding to go overseas. So for us, we approach them and it normally goes like, hi, you're probably thinking about taking that Series B funding to set up in the US right now. We'd like to talk to you about Australia. And then we talk about why Australia. It's a really good test market as a first point of entry, and it's a smaller, friendlier market in a friendlier time zone. And the couple of companies we've done really interesting work with, and what we've found in the next stage is it's then working with them to find their alpha client or their investor. So one of those is in examinations technology, again in EdTech, fantastic, and we found their alpha client for them. Another one, as an example, is waste to animal feed product. We ultimately, just to show you that we do work collaboratively with other states, introduced them to the pathway that they then got funding through Woodside Energy. Will do their first project in WA, but we know there is aspects to the Victorian market which will bring them back. So I hope I've given you sort of a lesson 101 on investment facilitation.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks very much.
Really enlightening, and I'll hand over to Ravneet for the next question. So next question.
My question is to Dr. Vibha Dhawan, who's the Director General of the Energy and Resources Institute here in India. Ma'am, you've been working quite closely across research and innovation, capacity building, technology, and so forth. And these are vital and require all stakeholders' readiness to adopt it. The question really is, bringing in new technology is not the only challenge, but upskilling workforce is also a huge challenge. So what initiatives can institution like TERI play in the Australia-India organization lead up to investment between the two countries, especially with focus on energy, focus on public-private partnerships and green concepts and green hydrogen?
Thank you, Ravneet. And it's really a pleasure to be here and listening to dignitaries about their views about how to take it further. Well, not just India and Australia, I'll say that TERI also has a very long association with Australian universities to work. When I was heading TERI, School of Advanced Studies, at that time also we had MOU with La Trobe and Monash University. And our objective was that let's bring in what the best teaching practices are. And when I visited Australia, one of the things I was really impressed with was distance learning education. Because in India, distance learning or correspondence, what we call in our country, it is looked down that the standards are not same as what a regular student learns. And I was quite surprised that at the end of the day in Australia, those who are learning by distance learning, they appear for the same exam and therefore their degree is recognized equivalent to those who have attended college full time. Thereafter, of course, we have a beautiful relationship with Deakin University. TERI has established TERI Deakin Nanobiotechnology Center, where because we are talking of capacity building. So therefore, it's quite a bit of research that we are doing through PhD students. It's a win-win situation because for us, it is that the areas in which we don't have capacity, since the student is doing PhD and they have a supervisor from Deakin, we are able to learn those things as well. And I suppose it's also win-win for Australian or Deakin University, because if you look at the problems of where the markets are going to be, those are countries like us, where populations are increasing. Problems are something that they must be solved because whatever happens in one part of the globe is going to have impact on rest of the globe. And therefore, the problems that the developing countries or emerging economies are facing, they must be tackled. Now, the other point is, and I'm like to use the phrase, why do we work to develop a broken wheel? Quite a bit of research has been done in Australia or other parts of the country. Rather than India starting from the base, why can't those technologies come here? And you work on it because see, none of the technologies developed anywhere in the world is not going to be plug and play. It is, you have to fine tune those technologies. If you look at hydrogen, see today, all the big companies, whether those are Tata's, Ambani's, Adani's, they all are venturing into setting up large hydrogen plants. They will cater to large industries or their industries to begin with. Why do you want to have a gap of maybe a decade before it essentially becomes available to small and medium enterprises? And India is a country of small and medium enterprises, and therefore it's very important that the technology reaches them.
Yeah.
Where is the gap? The gap is, can you bring that technology, first of all, fine tune it according to the requirement of SMEs, and then pass it on. So one is the acquisition of the technology, reliability of that technology, then fine tuning of that technology, maybe give some sort of soft loans so that they can invest in taking that technology. So there is a difference. One is not saying subsidy, one is saying initially that they can invest, they can adopt the technology, and through the profits or savings they make, they repay what they have invested initially. And third and most important thing, for success of any technology is the trained manpower. They should be able to adopt. When we talk of new technologies, Unfortunately, not many of us are trained in those technologies. Like if I ask you, we all are talking about hydrogen. We know very little what it is, what are going to be the gaps, what are the issues with storage, safety. And therefore, if we are talking of use of hydrogen in cars, then do we have, the training is required till the person who dispenses it into the car. So you require this entire chain, for which I think there is a lot of scope to work with Australian universities, bring this skill set, which has fortunately become quite simple after COVID, because we have also learned how to learn in virtual mode.
Yeah.
And the second, which I mentioned a bit earlier, is that let's also recognize that India, we have young workforce, very talented, very hardworking, very innovative. You look at the companies world over, I don't think so there will be any company in the world where there are no Indians contributing to R&D. So therefore, there are fertile minds, young workforce, which is available in India. And therefore, let's look at how can we work together in building a better planet. The role TERI can play, of course, it's a not-for-profit research organization. And our objective basically is to bring the technologies to the companies in India, and or rather also work on it when R&D stage, and then take it to them. So we are working with the companies to help them become net zero waste management, new packaging solutions, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I do think that TERI will play a very important role going forward. Jim, over to you.
Thanks very much. I'd like now to ask Brett Goldsmith, the Councillor for Education and Research with the Australian High Commission. And prior to his appointment to Councillor, Brett was also the Director of Policy and Legislation in the International Group for the Department of Education in Canberra. So, Brett, if I could ask you what you might want to share with us, we'd like to understand from you the future skill opportunities in the education and edu tech space. What does reimagining learning to create education accessibility at scale look like? Over to you, Brett.
Thank you very much, Jim. I don't know where that photo came from. Maybe my e-harmony shot, I'm not sure. This is me now, 10 years later. Thank you very much, Jim. Look, a very interesting question, and it does, I think, cross over into some of our other speakers. So, but it also does allow a little bit of blue sky thinking as well. We're really talking about reimagining what this looks like. I don't think we can. Therefore, we shouldn't be prescriptive about these are the things that we should do, or these are the things that we're doing at the moment, but it's about reimagining. Of course, the pandemic, as we've just heard, has forced upon us a total reimagining of the capabilities of technology, not only in terms of education, not only in terms of the technical delivery of it to a place, but also the way that the teaching or the learning is imparted through EdTech. I think that reimagining this in the Indian context within which we are now is also about the drivers of it. And I think that a national education policy has some of the signposts to that. A lot of it is about accessibility in remote areas. It's about equity. It's about the democratizing of education. It's about gender equity as well. So in reimagining EdTech, in reimagining skills development, I think that these are the kinds of drivers. There is, of course, there are the economic drivers, but if you can deliver skills training both in the cities, but also in the more remote areas where people currently don't have access, perhaps to education, or the kinds of education that is received is not up to the sort of skilling needs of this country. And I'm thinking about unleashing the intellectual power, the economic power of women in the workforce that will be possible. I was thinking we've had the Australia-India Leadership Dialogue recently, and we've had a number of institutions coming here, seeking partnerships with Indian business, with Indian institutions. We in government, our role, and I'll probably cover this perhaps if I get another question, is really about setting up the environment. One of our speakers earlier said now it's up to business, and that's, I think, business to business. I think to some extent that is very much true. The governments, I work for the Australian government, the Indian government, we have very strong bilateral engagement. We are trying to make each other's systems more similar to each other than rather than more different to each other. The more that we do that our systems speak to each other, we speak to each other, and therefore we can deliver the sorts of skills that are required. One of the things that we know India is fantastic at is technology, and this was a confession of one of my Australian colleagues at the Australia-India Leadership Dialogue on Tuesday. Australia is very good at regulation. I think that's why things are rather expensive in Australia. If you want high quality, if you want to maintain high quality, you've got to regulate. And I think that's where Australia has a lot to share with India in terms of setting up the regulatory platforms that will allow the delivery, will allow, for example, if you're in a remote area and you're doing exams or what have you, how do you ensure the integrity of the results of students? And Australia, in delivering remote education for a long time, has something to share there. I should also say, and I notice Pratibha Sen from IDP is here, from education, is they have a highly, down in Chennai, I forget the name of it, but it's almost a laboratory down there, the digital campus, which is very sophisticated, and we can learn from the innovations of business. So it's about government also learning and trying to keep up with business and making adjustments to the regulatory settings, so that we can deliver the sorts of education that is required in both of our countries, actually.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks very much.
Over to you, Ravneet.
Yeah, I think, Brett, you make good points there. I think government to government role is very important. Business to business role is very important. And I think that once the government set the scene, businesses can happen. And I think that's the space we are in at the moment. The next question is to Tim White, who's the Commercial Counsel at the Australian High Commission and Trade and Investment Commissioner, South Asia, Australia. Tim, I'm interested in your thoughts on, well, I know that AIBC is around the corner, and you are looking at a big delegation from Australia. What are the expectations of Austrade, and how do you actually see, key aspects like infrastructure, education, healthcare, or others that you think are important that are actually going to be able to do the business? A lot of has been said before, and a lot of discussions have happened about this, but from an Austrade perspective, what would you like to see happen?
Thank you. Thanks, Ravneet. Great to be with you all. And as you say, our teams are pretty busy at the moment, ramping up for another one of our AI acronyms. There's a lot of them going around at the moment, but the Australia-India Business Exchange Business Mission will be running to India, about 100 Australian companies coming here later in the month. So we're really fully engaged on that at the moment. But to your question, I guess it sort of picks up a number of strands of, what other speakers have been saying, which is, to Dee Dee's point about business literacy and the importance, I guess, of preparation, market preparation is, that's the most fundamental step for business. If you're looking at a new market, the preparation before visiting, before coming to AIBC, before making a connection with your counterparts is to really get a sound understanding of market dynamics. And I guess that's a role like Michelle, that, you know, for us at Austrade at the national level, we play that role in supporting companies to really develop that detailed understanding, whether it's regulatory issues, business culture issues, opportunities, challenges, how companies before them, before you have succeeded or failed. You know, all of these are really important lessons. So that's the first step, I guess, in my view, and that's what we want to see companies do, really do the sound preparation. But then I guess it's about, again, picking up on what Deepak was saying about future growth industries here in India. You have to have a contemporary understanding of the market. So, you know, listening to the list that Deepak reeled off about future growth priorities, I mean, these are absolutely areas of great complementarity between our economies. So infrastructure, you mentioned, you know, this is an area where we're bringing a group of infrastructure companies for AIBX. It will be services and technology companies that can feed into, you know, airport development or roads and highway development, or, you know, even digital infrastructure, for example. So these are the growth areas in the relationship that we have to try and capture, because there is now genuinely much more complementarity between our economies than I think we had 10 or 15 years ago. ECTA will help. It's a facilitator, as I think Ambassador Wadwa had said, and Didi as well. It's important, but the basic understanding of market dynamics and ensuring that your offering is really well matched with your counterparts in the other market, they're the fundamentals. And then free trade agreements and other initiatives can come in and support you to really surge your sort of market growth, I guess. But I really think preparation and a deep market understanding are vital.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Very well said. I think deep preparation is really important, understanding both sides of the markets. I think also doing business with India, passion, persistence, patience, and partnerships. These are the 4 Ps that I always refer to, will help and will always be useful, I think, for Australian businesses to think about India and Indian businesses to think about Australia. Jim, over to you.
Thanks, Pramit. And we'll now shift the focus on to agribusiness. And it's a great pleasure to introduce Kim Russell, our National Advisor for our agribusiness chapter. He's got a great background in agriculture. And just can I say, speaking personally as a former Director General of Primary Industries in Queensland and also Senior Officer in Victoria in Primary Industry, this is an area that for many, many years, I believe there's been great opportunities in India. And it's really the right time to really drive it. And on that note, let me ask Kim, what are the challenges in the agri-business sector in India, and how do we take them on board and deliver outcomes?
I'm almost stand here so the VD and go folks over there can see me. Can you hear me? Look, there's 5 quick things. Yield is king. You talk to every farmer, they will say yield is king. But not only with yield, it's genetics, it's nutrient density, it's the nutraceutical elements of food that we are breeding in the future. Resource efficiency, so that's nutrient, macronutrients, micronutrients, energy, all of these resources that are going into our farming businesses that need to be done efficiently. Water efficiency, for example, is a major issue with complementarity in Australia and India. Deeper, softer soils. If we can create that in both countries, that's all about the circular economy, getting waste out of waste streams and safely back into agricultural soils where those belong. I don't think the methane emissions from landfill and open dumps are getting enough of a hearing. Methane is 80 times worse in the first 20 years of its being emitted. So the 23, 26 times that we always hear about, 20 years, even I can still work toward that sort of a time frame. 100 years is a bit difficult. The other one is a value chain approach. It fits into everything with the land and water that farmers manage, the commodities and niche crops that they grow, the primary processing that they may do to deliver it to a manufacturer, the manufacturer, working with that manufacturer so you understand as a farmer what that manufacturer needs to produce the best quality product for the consumer. And then marketing a branded product. Australia's got a great reputation. If we can manage that from the paddock to the plate across these two great nations. And then the really, fascinating and exciting one is the digital economy, the agri business, the digital technology, the opportunity to bring that Internet of Things in our production systems, in our catchments, to make sure that the environment that we work and farm in is maintained and improved. So those 5 things to me are where the challenges lie, and everyone that has spoken today has identified opportunities in that, waste streams in the value chain, soils, all of those things that's where I see the challenge.
Yeah, what about wines, that is called red and white and de-alcoholized wine? Is there a market for that?
Oh, certainly. I've had a wonderful 30 trips to India since 2012 and engaged all over the country, and Australia has great reputation for wines as well as our food, and there's huge opportunity for those products going into a burgeoning middle class market. And then our passion, I suppose, my son Alex and Jerry and I, we've been working in this at the community level to get that organic waste back and safely into those soils so that those wines can be nurtured and grown and put in a bottle for our enjoyment.
And just my last question, we have a Australian Indigenous chapter, and one of the areas that come out is the export of Indigenous product, particularly with Indian curries and food. Do you see that as a market?
Oh, I went to in Delhi the tribal art and craft expo, and the food and the vibrancy of that place was absolutely amazing. The AIBC event in Sydney 2 weeks ago, it was really heartwarming to me to see that there was a very, very genuine desire and capacity to engage with our Indigenous First Nations people in Australia, and to see that connection start to happen in reality was just fantastic. And so thank you for all that you did to make sure that happened.
On that note, I'll hand over to Ramneet for our next speaker.
Thank you. This last question for today. Anurag, you work with the AIBC Victoria, and through the grants that we received from the Victorian government, we were able to do some work between setting up some possible and explore opportunities between India and Australia in the agri-tech space. Anurag, I'm interested in where do you see the opportunities, because you also run a business between India and Australia. So I'm interested in hearing your real on the ground, focus on where the opportunities are.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Still good morning. So as Ravneet mentioned, I have this unusual opportunity of working between India and Australia. I live between both places. I have businesses in both places. And we did do a project for Global Victoria with regards to the agri business space. Look, Ravneet, it was very timely for us, I guess. The project that we're doing whilst the FTA was being ratified and the fine print was being done. And in the agri space, there's tremendous opportunity. I mean, we all know Australia is a net exporter of agricultural goods and technology. We know the population of India. I will agree with a lot of the people who spoke before me with regards to that. Dr. Dhawan, who said, look, India is a place where it's all about culture. It's about relationships. It's about building those relationships. And I feel that between Australia and India, that is what I guess needs to be built. That bridge needs to be built where Australian businesses can understand Indian business and vice versa, of course. But as far as opportunity is concerned, there's immediate opportunity, obviously. I mean, if you look at wool, if you look at wool products, lamb, wine, all areas of agriculture, including lentils, pulses, all sorts of areas have duty reductions starting straight away for certain quotas and then reducing over a period of 7 to 10 years. So as far as India is concerned, yes, there's a great opportunity. But what I feel that there's an opportunity for Australia particularly is to part with technology, and build a good base of technology in India, because where India lacks is, I guess, as far as agri is concerned, is agri-tech. India needs things like grain storage technology, water conservation technology, water data technology, logistics, the whole 9 yards. So there's a lot of space there. And, again, India is also a farming nation. So I do believe that the synergies can be aligned, and I do believe that the opportunities are plenty.
Thank you very much. Very well said on that. There are lots of opportunities, definitely. Over to Jim.
Thanks, Nathan. Our time is limited, so I'm going to suggest, Ravneet, you ask one question to the audience, and I'll pick one person from the audience here in Australia. I'll pick Deepak Gupta. He's been he's a life member of the AIBC. He's president of the ACT chapter. He's been a member of parliament for the ACT. I would be interested, Deepak, in your perspective on this dialogue and what reflections you might have. You mentioned the digital cyber challenge, for example.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to see some of you who are present in Sydney and Melbourne as well. So it's good to see that we are coming into real business now, and that's something I've been advocating for a long time as a president of AIBC, ACT chapter, and director of the board. Is that we all talk about the young generation, the potential between India and Australia, but we have not seen the concrete outcome, what we all desire. Maybe sitting over in New Delhi or sitting here, everyone has this question. We are good in agriculture, we are good in cybersecurity, but where that is leading us, what are we bringing onto the table? This is very important. Event like this, we really have to convert these dialogues into opportunity and to the outcomes. Until unless we don't do it, I think it will be a talk fest more time. And considering Australia has the expertise, India has the resources, this is the perfect marriage we can ask for. All of us, you have gone to India, have seen how the business can be done. And a lot of speakers have spoken about the opportunity they have, and doing business in India sometimes can be tough. I think it's tough everywhere. We just spoken about the wine business. I was involved in the wine business in India 15 years back. But again, the thing is that, do we have the facilities there? Is it easy to supply wine from Australia, but it's not very easy to receive those wines and kept in the compound warehouses and all. So these are some of the infrastructures as well we have to work on with the Indian government, especially. And from here as well, we have to really make that channel, two-way channel, to make sure that what we are talking, we are really converting into business.
Thanks very much for that. Ravneet, do you have a question from one of your audience, and then we'll go back to the finalization of the.
Any questions from the floor? Yeah, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. This is Shanta Raman, advocate from Law Offices of India. It's a pleasure, Jim, to see you virtually, Vish and Con. And I have one small suggestion, one-liner suggestion, since Mr. Brett is also here. And since I am a lawyer coming from a legal background, so we don't have in the international studies, we don't have LLM, a post-graduation, for the study which is coming from internationally. The distance learning for LLM is not available. Of course, it's available for Indian universities. So if we can really concentrate on that, very many middle, after about 10 years or 15 years of practice, very many people want to do LLM, but they are not getting a scope to do the international studies unless they leave the practice and then go to any other country. So maybe that's a small suggestion. So that may be looked at. And thank you so much. Thank you. One small question to Mr. Ambassador Wadhwa. So, sir, since because the food industry and agriculture industry, you made a mention about it. So, since because in Indian, the government is slightly conservative on that, how do you feel that the coming years, the Indian government for food industry and agriculture industry will look up to and open up? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I think you're absolutely right about a certain amount of what could we call it? Maybe protectionism in the agriculture sector as far as India is concerned. I would say agriculture and dairy together. And that's been it's a traditional thinking which has to change over time. Now that India has started talking about number of FTAs, Australia was one of the first ones, but we have the others coming up with UK, with EU, with Israel, Canada, etc. You'll probably see much more of an opening up in the agricultural sector as well. There is a realization that the introduction of technology into agriculture in India is actually going to benefit the industry rather than looking at it from the perspective of other companies from outside coming over and taking over Indian agriculture, which was the mindset which existed so far. And that's also a reflection of how Indian companies have gone out and sought collaborations with companies outside so that they can actually increase their productivity. They can do much better in business. And that realization has happened, in my opinion, over the last few years. So we will see certainly a much better atmosphere as far as opening of the Indian agriculture sector is concerned. And the other aspect is that the use of satellite technology and forecasting and space in agriculture is coming to the Indian agriculture sector, which was not the case earlier. And the third, of course, is the setting up of local hearts or mandis, as we call it, where farmers can sell their produce, and they rely again on digital technology to find out where to sell it at a better price. Now, that's again a revolution which has happened only in the last few years. In fact, just 1.5 years ago, as you know. So we will see more of that. We'll see more introduction of grain and silo technologies into agriculture, introduction of new products, making sure that you have hybrid varieties coming into the market. And India has traditionally very, very conservative on that respect, thinking that agriculture as a holy cow should not be touched. That thinking is beginning to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Anilji. Thank you very much. I think we need to now get back to comments from Jody so that we can then wind up. Jim, we're almost around time.
Yeah, on time. So let me ask Judy Mackay, who's our just newly elected national chair, if she'd like to make comments. Over to you, Judy.
Thank you very much, Jim, and hello to everyone in Delhi and in Canberra. I'm here in Sydney. Look, I want to, first of all, can I start off by thanking you, Jim? This is your last task as National Chair of AIBC, and all of us are so grateful for the leadership that you've shown over a very long time. You are staying on the board, which we're all grateful for. But thank you for chairing this this meeting, and of course I take over from tomorrow. Look, I think the big issue for me as the incoming national chair, and it echoes a lot of what we've heard today, both in Delhi and in Canberra, is that while we have government doing a great job, we have the partnership, we have really a sincere effort by both India and Australia, we are in a position where business to business is not firing as it should. And people have heard me speak before on business to business being directly related to the people to people relationships. And that is about a cultural understanding, and it is about relationships. And Dee said, I thought this was a really good quote by Dee, if it's hard, you at least make the effort to learn more. And I think that really sums up where we are in this relationship. Government is doing well, business is prepared to act, and Deepak once again went through those. I think there were 34 sectors, if I'm right, Deepak, and 259 requests that you've had from Australian companies. So, you know, that is there, but it's the cultural understanding, the relationships, the education, the information, and as Tim said, it's the market preparedness. And I do see that there's a role for AIBC to play in this. Ravneet, I look forward to serving in the leadership team with you. And of course, Irfan is to speak shortly, and I know Ashok is there too. But we come in as the new leadership team at a really exciting time. And I can say that, you know, I speak on behalf of the four of us, or just to say that we are ready and very excited. So thank you again, Jim. Very much appreciate you and Ravneet organising this event.
Thanks a lot, Jody. That's a great idea. And what a great team. Four of them there. So let me now introduce and now who is also the New South Wales president, and we've created two new positions to support the elected team. An associate national chairman, associate national vice chair, and Irfan is the associate national chair. A great team, a great concept, because we know the workload is going to increase astronomically. So these two positions are there to support our elected officials. Over to you, Irfan, in addition to your New South Wales role.
Thank you, Jim, for those kind words. And again, I want to reinforce the great work that you've done, and again showcasing this important milestone for AIBC and AIBE. And greetings to all the folks in New Delhi, across in India, as well as Canberra and rest of Australia as well. Coming on the back of an amazing international business summit that we had, which again created that momentum and created that impact where there was people to people connect to enable and deliver business to business outcome. We had a lot of companies launched and a lot of agreements and outcomes that we've accelerated. But as Anil Wadhwaji mentioned, and also as Deepak Baglaji mentioned, we've created that momentum, but it's something which we need to continue, maintaining that. We need to create those new India opportunities, awareness, literacy sessions. We need to go out as well very actively. In fact, I just came back from a visit to Newcastle, where we were with the business folks, corporate startups, all these ecosystems, where we were taking the India literacy or India opportunities awareness. And as it turns out, I mean, there are some amazing companies across all those sectors touched on, whether it's renewable energy, which is a big one, the sunrise sectors, education, healthcare, medtech, and all those circular economy, which is a big one as well. There's a lot of opportunities. I'm also pleased I'm here in Sydney, in fact, meeting up with one major Indian renewable energy leader here shortly to take that forward and in really facilitating those business to business outcomes. So really looking forward to collaborating both sides, and we'll be back in India very soon to really deliver those outcomes. Only one thing I would leave, and that's probably something which I live and breathe, is we need to bring a bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit to this bilateral business to business outcomes that we are focusing on. Just as we've got these startups making a lot of impact in India and in Australia as well. We want to bring those SMEs and those startups to kind of lead the way here. Of course, the corporates and large companies will follow through because the opportunities are huge. So looking forward to shaping some of those successful outcomes and collaborating with you all. Thanks, Jim, and thanks, Con and team, and all the folks in India as well. Looking forward to meeting up and shaping those successful, impactful outcomes. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thanks, Irfan. That's a great message to translate dialogue into action. That's what we want. Now I'd like to ask a question to Ashok Mysore. He is the Vice President of Infosys. He has been the AIBC National Industry Chair for ICT, but he's also the Associate National Vice Chair as well, taken up that senior position with AIBC. And Ashok, is there some words of appreciation from your perspective, and you might want to mention critical technology as well, that you'd like to share with us?
So I'll give the closing.
Yes, if we can get closing comments from you.
I'll try to actually summarize. I mean, it's a really difficult act to follow after so many eminent speakers with so much of data and what the two countries can actually do. But what came across as consistent is, themes which we heard multiple times around, investment-led relationships, shared interests. It's a great time, though there is unrest on, from a geopolitical perspective, it's never been a better time for the Australia-India relationship. We talked about partnerships, collaboration. I mean, though we didn't really talk too much about talent and mobility, I think that's really the core of it as well between the two countries on how we can actually, take this relationship forward. A lot of conversations around innovation and startups. I mean, Deepak ji gave enough and more data around that. Basically, I guess, as Deepak ji said, and, Ravneet, you alluded to as well, at the end of the day, when you actually look at the substrata, the government to government part of it, that work is done. People to people from a diaspora perspective, I think, as Deepak ji said, that work has been done quite well from an Australian and the Indian context. I guess from a B2B perspective, with ECTA laying the foundation, as has been said, I think it's up to us to build the building blocks and actually take this relationship to the next level. So I think this is where I guess, today's soft launch on AIBE plays the important role of being that conduit between the businesses in Australia and in India, and see how we can actually create an economic value for both the countries and the citizens alike. So I'd just like to thank everyone for their inputs, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Ashok. And may I take the opportunity to thank Jim and congratulate Jim for a wonderful legacy that he has left AIBC with. Can we have a round of applause for Jim and his leadership?
We've got one more speaker, Ravneet, before we wrap up.
Yes, we have Vish giving his comments.
Yeah. So he is the chair of Make with India Industry Chapter. He's also one of our forces behind the scenes that does a lot of work with our media. So if you see some of the speeches made by the national chair, from all of that. And so the question I'd ask to you is, we designed this as a leadership dialogue rather than a speech fest. So in terms of doing a kind of appreciation, or sometimes called a word of thanks, what would you like to say?
I think basically, as every one of the speakers has given an important.
Vish, we can't hear you. You may have to stand up and speak closer to the mic.
Forward. First of all, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity. As I was saying that every one of the speakers today has given an important message. In fact, Con has been leading this Australian business enterprise. From the beginning, he has done a lot of hard work, and then he has been promoting that every one of the engagement has to be business focused. So that's what he's striving, and then we are working with him as a team. And I'm sure that with Australian Business Council as a team, we will be getting every business engagement directed to commercial outcomes. So that's one thing which he has said. And then Ambassador Anil Bhagwatji has clearly articulated that the future relationship has to be based on investments. And every time I'm listening to Anil Bhagwatji, I'm getting some thought-provoking ideas. And from his speech, and one of the things he has been consistently driving was the people-to-people communications, people-to-people relationship. But I personally believe that it is cannot be one-sided. It has to be both. It has to be bilateral as well. And so that is where there is a synergy in that. And then Deepak Bhagwatji has also given a lot of emphasis on the growth areas, especially in the startups. And that's where our strength of the younger generation lies. And so that a message is given. And once again, every speech of Deepak Bhagwatji is full of so many ideas. And he has elaborated so many sectors In fact, it is quite a big opportunity for Australian companies not to ignore India. I mean, it is a huge market. And in fact, as Mr. Piyush Goyal, when he was here, he drove the message that from $27 billion of trade at the moment, in next couple of years, we have to drive to $50 billion. So that is the kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you.
India is to what. And Michelle Wade has given a message of how people can also consider on Victoria and how Victorian government is promoting the new technology. This is another opportunity for India to consider Australia in terms of partnership in new technologies. And in terms of education and capacity building, we had excellent suggestions from Viva, from Terry, and India is an important innovation. I would say potential in R&D, so that we have to keep considering that. And Kim Russell gave a couple of ideas in terms of the actual business to business opportunities in soil mechanics, waste management, value chain approach. There's an excellent suggestion from you, Kim. And Tim White from Australia has also elaborated the people to preparation, planning aspect and creating an awareness aspects. And so on and so forth. But most importantly, since I'm heading the Make in India chapter, what I would like to drive the message is Make in India is not only good for India, but also for the rest of the world, especially the Australian companies. There's so much potential in many sectors, especially as Irfan was saying that the renewable energy. We have green hydrogen, there are a lot of synergies, electric vehicles. So there is so much opportunities in these areas. And as Jody also was alerting, that we as a team, we are going to take all these opportunities to commercial realities, and starting with the launch of Australian Business Enterprise. We are all proud to be part of that. And I think we will move forward with a great spirit. And to Jody, I want to say that you are not only 4 people on the board, but we are all with you, all of us as a team. Like to take it up and support you as a team so that we can focus all our energies into commercial outcomes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Wish.
We always finish on time, and it's 28. And I'd just like to also thank our sponsors here today. That's Jagger. And Deepak for organizing that, Deepak Gupta. Of course, the leadership company, which is owned by yours truly. Deakin University of Rugby, fantastic that Deakin has been a sponsor here.
Thank you.
I also wanted to thank Wendy Farrell, who's worked extremely hard on this in the National Secretariat, and Vishal. And Vishal Kumar, working very hard up in there. And
Thank you, Jim.
Working very hard.
Thank you.
And you can close it then, Rodney. Since you're the new leadership, I'll reside back. You've got a minute or so, all over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jim. And thank you, colleagues, for coming in today. And I'd like to thank the team for organizing this. And I do welcome the new chair, Jody. Looking forward to working with you and the leadership team. Thank you all for coming in today. It's been a great session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can just cut it.
Yeah.